"Pack your things and get out of my house, you little parasite." Those were the first words my stepmother spoke to me after we buried my father. Not "I am sorry for your loss" or "we'll get through this together," just a cold eviction. Notice delivered in our living room while my father's funeral flowers still sat wilting on the mantle. But what Vivian Castellano didn't know was that my father and I had spent the last 6 months preparing for exactly this moment. I stood in the doorway of what had been my childhood home, a beautiful craftsman-style house in Pasadena, California, worth easily $2.3 million in today's market. My father had bought it 30 years ago when the neighborhood was just starting to gentrify. Now it sat on a tree-lined street where Teslas outnumbered Toyotas and weekend farmers markets sold $8 loaves of artisan bread. Vivian crossed her arms, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her Chanel blazer. "Did you hear me, Isabel? This is my house now. Your father's gone. Which means everything he owned belongs to me. Community property law, sweetheart, look it up." I could have argued right then, could have told her everything. But my father had taught me patience, and I'd learned the lesson well. "I understand," I said quietly. Pulling my suitcase from the hall closet, she blinked. Surprised by my compliance, she'd been gearing up for a fight. And I just deflated her entire performance. "Well, good. I expected more drama from you, honestly. Your father always said you were difficult." That was a lie. My father had never said anything of the sort. But I let it pass. "I'll be out by tonight," I told her, heading upstairs to my childhood bedroom. "Make it within the hour," she called after me. "I'm having the locks changed at 3, and I don't want you thinking you can sneak back in." Let me back up and explain how we got here, because Vivian's cruelty didn't start the day my father died. It started 5 years ago when she married him. My mother passed away from cancer when I was 16. For 5 years, it was just Dad and me against the world. He taught me about property law while I helped him manage his small real estate portfolio. We were a team, him handling the business side, me learning everything I could about investments, property management, and California real estate regulations. Then he met Vivian at a charity gala. She was 42, glamorous, and seemingly charmed by my father's quiet intelligence and success. He was 58, lonely, and I think ready to share his life with someone again. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Napa Valley. I was 21 and away at UCLA studying business and real estate law. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But something about Vivian felt off from the beginning. The way she asked detailed questions about his properties, how she always steered conversations toward his assets and investments, the little comments about securing their future together. "Dad, I think you should get a prenup," I told him 2 weeks before the wedding. He'd smiled sadly. "Isabel, I know you're worried. But Vivian loves me. Not everything is a transaction." "I know, but just to be safe, sweetheart, I've been handling my own affairs for 30 years. Trust me," so I backed off. What else could I do? He was an adult, and it was his life. The first year of marriage seemed fine. Vivian played the role of devoted wife convincingly, but by year 2, cracks started showing. She began making comments about the house being outdated and needing significant upgrades. She pushed my father to sell some of his rental properties to simplify their portfolio. She started accompanying him to every doctor's appointment, every lawyer meeting, every financial planning session. When my father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 years into their marriage, Vivian's mask didn't slip, it shattered completely. Suddenly she was researching his life insurance policies, asking pointed questions about his will. making comments about what she'd do with the house once he was gone. She said these things in front of him, as if he were already dead. I flew home from a real estate conference in Chicago the day I heard about his diagnosis. Found my father sitting alone in his study, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. She asked me today if I'd updated my beneficiaries, he said without preamble. Didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't ask what the doctors said, just wanted to know about beneficiaries. I knelt beside his chair. Dad, you were right about the prenup. His laugh was bitter. I was a fool, you were hopeful, that's not the same thing. We sat in silence for a while. Then he straightened up, and I saw a familiar determination in his eyes, the same look he got when he was about to close a particularly complex deal. Isabel, I need you to listen carefully. We have work to do. Over the next 6 months, my father and I embarked on what he called Project Firewall. He was weak, undergoing chemotherapy, but his mind stayed sharp as ever. First, we inventoried everything. The Pasadena house, purchased in 1993 for $310,000, now worth $2.3 million, for rental properties scattered across Los Angeles County. A commercial building in Glendale, the house is what she wants most, Dad said during one of our late-night planning sessions. She's already measuring for renovations, talking about selling it and moving to Newport Beach. Can we protect it? We can, but it requires some creative restructuring. Are you willing to trust me? Always. Here's what most people don't understand about California community property law. It's complicated. Yes, assets acquired during marriage are generally community property, but there are exceptions. Loopholes, and legal structures that can protect separate property if you're smart about it. My father was very smart about it. He'd purchased the Pasadena house before marrying Vivian, which made it his separate property, but he'd refinanced the mortgage during the marriage, which could potentially give Vivian a claim to community property interest in the increased equity unless. We hired an attorney named Margaret Osei, a family law specialist who'd handled complex estate cases for 30 years, together. We crafted a strategy that was perfectly legal and absolutely bulletproof. First, my father created a living trust, transferring the Pasadena house into it as the trustee. He maintained control during his lifetime. The trust designated me as the beneficiary and successor trustee upon his death, but won't Vivian contest this? I asked during a meeting in Margaret's downtown LA office. Margaret smiled. She can try, but your father purchased this house with separate property funds before the marriage. He's within his rights to transfer it to a trust. The refinancing complicates things slightly, but we've addressed that. How? My father pulled out a document. I'm paying Vivian $150,000 from my life insurance proceeds, representing her community property interest in the equity gained during our marriage. Margaret calculated it based on the increased value and mortgage payments made with community funds. It's more than fair, it's generous. She gets $150,000 and no claim to the house. Exactly. Along with half of our other community property assets, the stocks, savings, etc. She'll walk away with roughly $850,000 total. Not bad for 5 years of marriage. It was brilliant. Vivian would get a substantial inheritance, but the house, my childhood home, the property my mother had loved, would stay in our family. But we didn't stop there. The 4 rental properties presented a different challenge. 3 had been purchased during the marriage with community funds, making them community property. But the 4th, a small duplex in Highland Park, had been purchased before the marriage with separate property funds. Same strategy, Margaret explained. Duplex goes into a separate trust with Isabel as beneficiary. The other 3 properties remain community property, so Vivian gets half their value. We spent months getting every detail right, every document notarized, every transfer recorded. Every legal requirement met. My father insisted on video recording several conversations where he explained his reasoning, demonstrating his sound mind and voluntary actions. I want there to be no doubt. He told the camera during one recording, "I love my daughter. She's been by my side through everything. This house represents my life with her mother. And I want Isabel to have it. I'm providing generously for Vivian. But this specific property holds sentimental value that money can't replace. 3 weeks before he died, we finished everything. The trusts were funded, the documents filed, the legal protections in place. She's going to be furious," I said as we sat in his study, the same room where he taught me about real estate all those years ago. "Let her be furious. You'll be protected." He took my hand. "Isabel, I'm sorry I didn't see what she was from the beginning, Dad." "No, let me finish. I was lonely and foolish. I thought I could recreate what I had with your mother. But your mother was irreplaceable." His eyes glistened. "I failed you by bringing Vivian into our lives." "You didn't fail me. You loved someone. That's not a failure." He squeezed my hand. "Promise me you'll fight for this house. Your mother chose every paint color, every fixture. She planted the roses out front. This is her legacy as much as mine, I promise." He died 2 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep with me holding his hand. Vivian was at a spa in Santa Barbara and arrived home 6 hours after he passed. The funeral was a spectacle. Vivian played the grieving widow, perfectly designer black dress, artful tears, dramatic embraces. I stood apart, genuinely mourning, while she performed grief for an audience. The moment we returned home from the burial, her mask dropped completely. "Your father's dead. This is my house. Get out." I'd expected this, had prepared for it, but hearing the words still felt like a slap. "Vivian, we should talk about." There's nothing to talk about. Community property law is clear. I inherit everything. So pack your bags and leave before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. I could have argued. Could have shown her the trust documents right then. But something in me wanted to let her have this moment of triumph because the fall was going to be so much harder. I packed slowly, methodically. My clothes, my books, my mother's jewelry that Dad had kept safe for me. Vivian watched from the doorway, smiling. "You know what the funny thing is," she said. "Your father actually felt guilty about you. Worried he wasn't leaving you enough. I told him you'd be fine, that you were young and capable. He thought he was being noble by giving you what you got in the will." My stomach clenched. What I got in the will, $50,000, sweetheart. That's your inheritance, $50,000, and whatever personal items he specifically left you. Everything else, mine. She was lying. Of course, she hadn't seen the actual trust documents. Only the simple will that left her the community property assets and some cash. The trusts weren't mentioned in the will, they operated separately. Now get out before I change the locks with you still inside. I loaded my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that Vivian had always mocked her, and drove to my apartment in Silver Lake. I kept the lease even though I'd been staying at the house to care for my father. Smart decision, as it turned out. That night, I slept fitfully, my phone on the nightstand. I knew what was coming. Margaret Ose called me at 8:47 a.m. She knows what happened. I sent a courier to deliver the trust documents and property records as instructed. She answered the door in a bathrobe. Took the envelope, and I'm told there was quite a bit of screaming. The documents are solid. Right, she can't. Isabel, we've been over this. The trusts are airtight. Your father had full legal right to transfer his separate property. The house is yours. The Highland Park duplex is yours. She gets the community property assets. Which is generous considering her behavior. She's going to fight this. Of course she will. She'll hire a lawyer, maybe contest the trusts, claim undue influence or diminished capacity. Let her. We have video evidence, medical records showing your father's sound mind. And ironclad documentation. She won't win. 2 hours later. My phone exploded with calls from Vivian's number. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. You manipulated him. This is illegal. I'll sue you for everything. That house is mine. I forwarded everything to Margaret and blocked Vivian's number. 3 days later. Vivian's attorney, some aggressive litigator she'd found, sent a formal letter demanding I vacate Mrs. Castellano's property and threatening legal action for fraud, undue influence, and elder abuse. Margaret responded with our complete documentation package and a polite suggestion that opposing counsel review California probate code sections regarding separate property and living trusts. Before making further baseless accusations, the threat stopped. A month after my father's death, I stood in the living room of my childhood home, my home now, watching movers take away the last of Vivian's belongings. She'd negotiated through her lawyer to retrieve her personal items. And I'd agreed to a supervised move out. She appeared in the doorway. Her glamorous facade cracked and faded. No designer clothes today, just jeans and a sweatshirt, no perfectly styled hair. Just a messy ponytail. She looked like what she was, someone who'd gambled on marrying money and lost. You think you're so smart, she said. Her voice venomous. I think my father was smart. He protected what mattered to him. He was a senile old man who you manipulated. He was sharper than you ever gave him credit for, and he saw exactly what you were, Vivian. He just saw it too late to avoid marrying you. She stepped closer. And for a moment I thought she might actually attack me. This house should be mine. I earned it. By doing what? Asking about his beneficiaries while he was dying. Making renovation plans before he was even buried. You earned nothing. You married a good man and spent 5 years showing him who you really were. I loved him. No, you didn't. And the saddest part is, he really did love you at first. You could have had a real marriage, a real partnership. Instead, you saw dollar signs. The moving company supervisor knocked on the doorframe. Ma'am, we're all loaded up. Vivian grabbed her purse, then turned back to me one last time. You'll never keep this house. It's too expensive, too much maintenance. You'll be forced to sell within a year. I smiled. You know what's funny? My father taught me everything about real estate. I've been managing rental property since I was 19. I know exactly what this house costs to maintain. And I have the income to cover it. The Highland Park duplex he left me generates $4,800 a month in rent. Combined with my own income, I'm more than comfortable. Her face went pale as she realized again how thoroughly she'd underestimated both my father and me. Oh, and Vivian, you should know that my father's life insurance policy had a specific clause. The $1.5 million payout is reduced by 50% if the marriage lasted less than 7 years. I hadn't known about that clause until after his death, but watching her face crumble made me grateful my father had been so thorough. She left without another word. That was 8 months ago. In the time since, I've turned my childhood home into exactly what my father would have wanted. I repainted the exterior in the same colors my mother originally chose. I restored her rose garden, which Vivian had let die. I converted my father's study into a home office where I manage my growing real estate portfolio. The house is paid off. My father had finished the mortgage years ago, so my only costs are property, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. The rental income from the Highland Park duplex covers most of that, and my job as a real estate consultant covers the rest. Vivian tried to contest the trusts twice, both times. Her cases were dismissed. She eventually settled for the community property assets and her reduced life insurance payout, roughly $850,000 total. Last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona and married a retired dentist. I hope she's happy. I genuinely do. Margaret also stopped by last month to drop off some final paperwork. We sat in the living room drinking coffee, and she looked around with satisfaction. Your father would be proud of you, she said. I just followed his instructions. No, you did more than that. You honored his legacy. This house is not just property to you. It's memory, it's family, it's love. That's what he wanted to protect. She was right. Every corner of this house holds memories. The kitchen where Mom taught me to make her famous lasagna, the backyard where Dad and I practiced pitching before my softball games, the front porch where we'd sit on summer evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Vivian saw a $2.3 million asset. I see home. Last week, I was cleaning out the attic and found a box of my mother's things. Inside was a letter she'd written to me, meant to be opened when I graduated college. My father must have kept it safe for all these years. The letter talks about love, loss, and legacy, but one line stood out. Our house is more than walls and a roof. Sweetheart, it's the container for our family's story. Protect it, cherish it, and someday pass it on to someone you love. I'm 26 now, single, and focused on building my career and property portfolio. Marriage and children might come someday, or they might not, but either way, this house will stay in our family. Because my father understood something Vivian never could. Some things aren't for sale, some legacies can't be measured in dollars. Some loves transcend death and courtrooms and legal documents. My father protected this house not because of its market value, but because it represented everything he and my mother built together. Every mortgage payment was an investment in our family's future. Every repair was an act of love. Every decision was made with intention and care. Vivian wanted to cash it all in and move to Newport Beach. But you can't cash in love. You can't liquidate memories. You can't put a price tag on belonging. So now I sit on the same front porch where my parents sat 30 years ago, watching the sunset over Pasadena, grateful for a father who taught me about more than just real estate war. He taught me about legacy, about protection, about fighting for what matters. The house is mine now, but more than that, the responsibility is mine, the story is mine, the future is mine, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take it away.